Hi, everybody. I had promised another video showing some things in Revit. This time I'm going to be using the curtain wall feature in Revit and kind of showcasing different things that you can do with it. This in preparation to you kind of looking more at the building exterior, the facade, and some things that you're going to be doing to develop that so that you can start taking your elevations a little bit more seriously. I think specifically, a couple of people asked and requested that I look at things like how the mullions can be used or adjusted so that you can create things like shading devices, louvers, and other things like that. So I have my test project. I'm going to be using that and just kind of walking through a little bit of that. I'm using Revit 2025 as before. And so here's a model that I had created previously. You should be familiar with this. It's kind of the one that that I made as a test. I have made some additional adjustments and different things. And one of the things that has happened, and this is probably happening to everybody, is that as you develop your floor plan and you change things, you start to realize that your grid may or may not be suited to the way that the spaces are ending up. And so I had started with a very generic grid that was 30 feet by 30 feet. And I have now kind of made some changes. All in all, these changes probably need me to adjust this grid. And so, for example, I may be thinking that it's best to align this grid line to this glass area right here, or right before the glass, for the purpose of being able to support the edge of the slab above out of a more consistent location, for example. And then the same thing can happen back here where I would definitely not like this notion that a column would show up in the middle of the space. Like right here, that would probably indicate a column. And that is not something that I want to necessarily have there. So I have these 24-foot bays, which are actually pretty manageable for me. And I may start to just simply adjust these. So mainly one of the things that can happen is that I can start thinking of ways to adjust my, and you have to be careful when you do that, because if these things are, when you have these dimensions, they are constraining. So you need to unconstrain those. But then some of these would actually be really good to have and just kind of keep moving them as. And so I am going to very quickly do this. I don't want to dwell on this, but I'm just mentioning it because I've noticed a lot of in a lot of places everybody could stand to revisit, I think, the structural grid that you're doing. So I'm going to move this guy to the center here, and I'm putting them at the center of my walls right now. Just kind of gauging that might be where I really want them. But it may be that they're not in the center of the wall everywhere. Like, for example, if these walls are cast in place concrete or masonry, the grid may be best on the edge or face of the wall because it's a solid material. So normally these grid lines, when we're thinking about structure, they're better used at a center when we're thinking about something like a steel column, which tends to be hollow, and we're actually looking at the center. It can also work very well for wide flanges, and it can work well for timber framing, where it's just kind of a center of an object that is in space. But when we're thinking about a wall, not a point, walls tend to be better set up on an edge. So that's just a distinction, which what it means really is that on this side where you start and it's a full wall, and potentially on this other side, your grid could be either on the exterior face or on the interior face of that wall as a setup. But we don't need to spend, so these things are still constrained. You can see that. So that's why it's doing this to me. I'm going to move it. That one is right now. Should be able to, uh-oh. So I'm trying to align these to the center right now. And you can lock them. I never do that. Don't lock things, because sometimes what happens is that, yes, you may want your walls to move with your grid, but sometimes you end up over constraining things, and then later maybe you forget, and then things get moved altogether, which is not ideal. So I, as a general rule, try not to lock my grids. So, just something to think about. So now my grid is kind of changed from a 30 by 30 to being 30 maybe in this direction and 24 in this direction. But the reality is that I will probably continue to adjust it so that these are now needing to kind of show up here, or they can be closer to the exterior. More than likely, just that to be a 24-foot dimension as well. And then I'll probably, do the same here, although this one may want to be a 30. And so what I like about this exercise is that it helps you kind of be rational about where you're putting, both the walls and the grids. And so you are not just trying to generate a grid for your structure, you're actually using the structure to help you rationalize the spaces, so you can kind of go back and forth and create a simple grid for that. And in this case, I might just, instead of, because 30 is a very convenient dimension, this is what I want to do. And so what I had done is I made 4 classrooms here. These are still my little kind of kindergarten spaces. And you can come directly from the drop-off location, which I envision happens up here. And then little ones come through a kind of vestibule, lockers and such. And so I made these wing walls so that we can pack some lockers, do some other things, and potentially create these little vestibules where you can wash your hands and hang your coat, get your lunchbox ready in here. So all of those things happen in there. And then there is the actual classroom zone with a more quiet zone here. So this may or may not be a full wall, but that's how I started to set these classrooms up. And then for scale, I had thrown in a couple of chairs, and I had some other things. So just as a refresher. Okay, so let's move on into this idea of the curtain wall. Let's suppose that I have fixed all of my grids and I have everything where I want it. A couple of things to think about. In Revit, I always have a view that is a 3D view open when I'm working, especially when I'm working with curtain walls and elements like this. So this is what my model looks like right now. I haven't put that much time into it, but you can see I have a few elements. It has several stories. And then I have these pieces of curtain wall that are sitting right here that are kind of containing my lobby. And then there would be more than likely another one that sits back in there. And, I haven't necessarily enclosed every floor, but we're going to be focusing on this one and then the one in the back. So in Revit, when you're moving and navigating around, in case this is driving you crazy, if you happen to click on an element and then you go about rotating your model using this feature, you are never going to be able to lose that center. So it is a really good thing to have if you don't, because if I don't, and if I start rotating and I'm rotating by using the shift key and the center of my mouse, so you can kind of, if we do it without selecting anything, what tends to happen is that you can get lost very easily. You see, like, you don't know where things are. So what you want to do is select something And then Revit will basically rotate about that element without you being able to get too lost. So you can see that this area of curtain wall is also stepped. So the second floor kind of overhangs or cantilevers out, and this floor is a little bit further back. And so this is not so much in proper terms a curtain wall. It's probably more like glass that sits on its own weight. It's not clipped through the surface, whereas the glass that I have over here, I do think that this could probably be more of a curtain wall, which, because the slab edge is so far away, means that I probably will need a structure to support it. So there's going to have to be some kind of structure, more than more than likely steel behind it, so that I am actually supporting that. And that is a good thing, because I also have the edge of this slab up here that I'm going to need to pick up. So either way, I'm going to be doing that. So things that you can do in curtain wall. So although a curtain wall is always showing up as a default like this, curtain wall, and you can see it has glass, it doesn't mean that a curtain wall always has to stay as glass. You can use this tool for many different things because it lets you do a lot of different things with it. I'm gonna, just to kind of not let the shadows get in my way, we're gonna turn those off. And maybe because sometimes it's better to see this shaded. Let's see, consistent colors. That's not much better. Let's look at it like this for a minute. Although I really do prefer to see the hidden line view. But this makes the curtain wall really clear. Okay, so this is the slab on grade, and you can see it's a 4-inch concrete slab. This, on the other hand, is not supposed to be a concrete slab. So I'm going to change this to a concrete on metal deck, because this is up above. So it's a different type of slab. And I'm also, okay, this one is already the concrete deck. So metal deck with concrete on the top. We have questions about that, we can talk a little bit more about it. But anyway, curtain wall. So it's here, it's very simple. We are going to find our tools to use the curtain wall, and the first ones are usually this curtain grid. This lets you divide them. You can see there's a Mullion tool right next to it. So I'm going to use the curtain grid, and as soon as I approach the curtain wall with it, you can see what happens, and that's 8 feet. So I can actually start, I like 8 feet as a dimension. That actually sounds really good. So I'm gonna start dividing this curtain wall into approximately 8 foot dimensions. And I can do it from the top or the bottom. And so it's the first thing that I have done. Now that I have that, I may have to really create a section so that I can go and look at the distances. But you can see that they are almost all of them. So this one didn't land where I wanted it to, so I'm gonna make it be 8 feet by simply clicking on it and making it be 8 feet. The same with this one. I'm gonna make that be 8 feet. And in this case, I'm gonna let them sort of continue to be 8 feet segments until the last one, which is right there. And that's okay. We can always come back. So now I have all these equal segments. I don't have to just divide the curtain wall in the vertical. I can do it in horizontal segments as well. So you can just grab the same tool and position yourself to get some of these. I'm gonna say, just generically, this is kind of, normally you'll want to match potentially the datum lines in your project. Those are the levels on your building. So I'm just gonna put a few here just for the purposes of the conversation. And you don't have to always have crisscrossing. Like you can opt to do only vertical mullions, but your glass has a limitation. So usually a piece of glass can only be, as big as an oven where we actually heat the glass and set it. So usually glass, once it starts to get bigger than a 4 foot, 5 foot panel, that starts to get very difficult in the width. And then it's probably as tall as 12, 14 feet. That starts to really push it. And then after that, glass gets really expensive. So for that reason, you see these systems tend to have a lot of breaks to make the glass piece is more manageable. These things are super heavy and they're difficult to install. So that's one technical reason, but also they need to be made inside an oven and the oven has to be a certain size. So for all those reasons, glass starts to get, limited in size. And so the mullions help stabilize the glass, they stiffen it, and they also give us a good place to break the glass and then keep adding pieces of glass. It's like a kit of parts of sorts. And in a curtain wall application, we can continue to add glass and we can butt the glass together without a frame, or we can choose to have the frame in many places. Sometimes, there's a choice that you can have, and that depends on which one of your directions is supporting. So if you're supporting your curtain wall horizontally, then you need mullions probably there. If you're supporting it vertically, then your mullions are vertical typically, or there needs to be something to help you hold the mullion. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that has to do a lot with the facade expression. So now that I have these divisions, I'm gonna just kind of show you what happens when, for example, I wanna maybe think about a portion of this curtain wall not being glass. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is, and show you, is curtain walls don't always have to be glass. So I just use the tab key on my keyboard and I hover. So as you hover here, kind of near that divider, I start clicking tab until I select it. And when I see it highlight, I grab that panel. And you can see that that's just the glass panel. So an awesome thing that you can do with curtain walls is that you can turn them into any wall that you want. So they don't have to be glass. So in this case, I'm going to say, you know what? I actually want this one to be brick. So even though it doesn't have necessarily anything, this is my generic wall. What just happened is I turned that panel into a brick module, and I can do that consistently with all these panels, or I can delete this divider here and just you can also remove the division of that mullion. Oh, it's saying that my wall is overlapping with another wall, which is not a big deal for right now. So just, I'm gonna take that down all the way to the floor, because what I'm trying to do is so the wall is right now probably overlapping this one. It has to do with this thing. So something that we can fix. So I just keep tabbing my way and I'll get all of them. So that's one really good thing that you can do. So it's saying that right now I don't have the ability to turn this one into glass, into the brick, because it's too short for this particular type. And that's fine. What I would do So these guys, you can remove segments, right? So you can remove the segment. You see what happened there is that the segment is gone. I just used the add remove segment. So you kind of go here and add remove segments. And you can actually just tab right there and remove that sucker. And once it's gone, now it means that this entire thing can be selected as a panel. And since it's no longer glass, it's actually a wall, it can be way bigger. Okay. So that's sort of what's happening here. And I probably won't be able to do this one without selecting. So one quick thing that you can do. So within the curtain wall expanse, now I have opaque wall or solid wall that is brick, and that can help me break this mass. So I don't have to change my material. I'm managing it all with the curtain wall. And now I just have more than one material inside this curtain wall, which is kind of a good thing for me. So other things that we can do is we can insert a door. So I'm going to try and put doors here. Let's see. So we tab our way right there, and I'm going to try and remove this segment so that I can have this much area to put doors. And so I don't have necessarily the proper door family loaded right now, but let's see what I can get in here. But you can grab that. And there probably is some type of, okay, there's a storefront double door. We'll put that guy right here. It's not perfect, but you know, it will do in a pinch. For right now, it'll probably show up on my floor plan, and it's giving me the ability to put doors. And so if I had kept the curtain grid here, then it would have made the door kind of squattier and shorter. But you can use the curtain wall tool and actually insert either doors or windows. So you can very simply do that. And you can also insert a door or a window within the opaque wall that you have here. So all those things are possible. Then I just want to add some mullions. So typically you'll have one at the bottom. But then what happens is that you don't have one mullion when you have a door, because that would create an obstacle for anyone in a wheelchair. So you can't have that one there. So you just simply tab, select it, and you can delete it. And now you can see that the mullion is only happening where it needs to and not at the doors. You can also create your vertical mullions out of this one profile that is already preloaded in here. It's a very basic 2.5 by 5 inch rectangular mullion. But now I'm kind of thinking, you know, I really would like to have some fence on this elevation. It's kind of east facing, you know, for whatever reason, it can be a part of that. So I'm just going to be wanting to put some fence in here. So the first thing that I'll do is I'm gonna grab a mullion, or not the glaze panel. I'm trying to grab this guy. So that's my mullion. And we're gonna look to see what else is in here. And there's not a lot loaded. So you can always do an edit type. And when you go to edit the type, you can duplicate your mullion. That's the first thing that we want to do. And in this case, this is 2.5 wide by 5 inches deep. So what I'm gonna try and do is I'm gonna want to make it, I'm gonna say 16 inches deep, right? Just for. Okay, so now that I've renamed it, it's a 2.5 by 16 inches. And so I am going to try and see if I can make that work for me right here out of this. I'm gonna apply, and we're gonna say okay. And so here you go. This is now kind of a fin. It's 16 inches. So the weird thing about it is that Maybe what I really wanted was for this to project out and not to be centered, because right now it's just being centered by default. Revit is just going to center that length. And maybe what I need is a projection. So I will go back in here. And there is a way to, there's a way to create an offset that I am looking for in here. There we go. So you see it up here. So the offset is how you tell Revit to move this one way or another. So I can't remember if it will push it out or in, depending on whether this is negative or positive. So I'm just going to trial and error this. So I'm going to give it a 4-inch offset. And I'm going to say apply and okay. And we'll see what that does. So what it did was it moved it in. So I am going to, instead of doing that, I'm going to write a negative dimension. And I'm going to move it 12 inches out, hopefully. And yeah, that worked. So you can see that it kind of pushed that profile all the way out by that offset distance. And now I can just go through here and grab other mullions that I may want. And you know, this is not perfect. I probably should fix this offset so that it's a little bit more like sitting on top of the mullion where it should be. So let's just fix that so that it's right here with the offset. I gave it a foot, and maybe instead of a whole foot, we should do 8 inches. So negative 8 inches so that it pushes out. And I'm going to apply and I'm going to hit OK. And because the original width is 5, you know, that's part of what's going on here. Maybe let's do 9 inches. Apply that, hit OK. You know, I needed to go the other way. I keep going the wrong way. 7 inches, apply, okay. Okay, good. So now I have that. And now I can go around and edit other mullions to match this one. I'll just select the one that I created. And that starts to generate a fin. If you want to use this mullion horizontally, you can. So you would just add a mullion to this, and you could grab that guy and use that same profile. And now you have different ways to create those extensions from your mullions. And that could be applied, you know, you can spend maybe, you know, an hour or so in a section of curtain wall until you get it just right. I tend to think that the best approach is to find ways to, if you can, bring some opacity to your walls, especially on those east and west elevations. If it's warranted, make sure that there is some opacity. And then on the south elevation, it would probably be something to where I would be looking at making more of a horizontal with my mullions. Another, so you would use them, that just say for the sake of argument that this was a south facing facade. I may not want any mullions on the vertical. I just want them to be these horizontal louvers. And so you could do that. And you can start adding. So within your system, you can put more and make them tighter. There are some overlapping walls, and I would tend to want to fix that. So if that is happening on your model, just fix your overlaps. But I'm just going to use this mullion that I made. The wall got shorter because I inserted that. And so, you know, those are things that happen as a result of what I did originally. So you probably want to treat your glass first, then delete the segments that you don't need, and then put your opaque wall as a rule. And there it is. So now I have the start of a louver system, and I can start testing that with the light and shadow, put my sun in there, and then see how I'm doing for shade with that. But that's how you tend to do that. It was a pretty simple profile. I'm not saying that you have to use exactly what is on the box. You can change the profile even further. What I did is the simplest things, which is that I made a rectangular mullion bigger, and then I gave it an offset so that it would sit and project out of my curtain wall the way that I wanted it. You can, and mullions are made by creating a profile. So the family that makes the mullion is actually in profile. So you draw a profile and you can create your own custom mullion as well. So if you see something on a project that you really like and you want to put it, you can take a stab at creating your own custom profile and making a mullion out of that custom profile. It is typical that louvers in curtain wall facades are either rectangular, very simple, but they can also be like an airfoil type of system, and sometimes they have kind of like a tippy nose, so they taper out. There's very many different ones. So if you see something that you think would work really well with your project, and you have more specific questions about how to make it, I'm happy to help. But this is just like a quick tutorial on how to use the curtain wall and how to make your mullion extensions. And hopefully you can see how quickly you can start to kind of really vary your facade. Please don't go crazy, use it wisely, and I will talk to you guys soon.